Well, slurpty derp, my G's. How are you guys all doing? I hope you're all doing wonderful. I hope you're looking forward to Christmas as well. I hope you like Christmas. I like Christmas. Let us know down below. You're a Christmas person or you're not really a Christmas person. I definitely am. I love Christmas. It's probably my favourite time of year. And yes, anyway, today I wanted to do a little mix down top 10 bits of mix down advice. I just thought of these off the top of my head the other night. They just all flowed straight out of me. I just wrote them out onto my phone, like my first 10 thoughts that I had about how to help you with your mixdowns, should you be struggling. Perhaps your mixdowns are already perfect. By the way, on the last video, I was so overwhelmed by the positive comments from all of you guys. I thank you so much. It was like absolutely epic. It was great to read some comments from people who have probably been watching for a while but never wrote anything, and that's been really great. And it was honestly so nice to feel like the real connection between myself talking to a camera on my own and you guys on the other side of the internet actually talking back and appreciating everything that I've done. So just thank you guys. It was just amazing. Like, I'm so happy for this community that we've got. And so, yeah, I thought, like, how can I add more value? You know, I'm going to give you some tips and then you can turn off YouTube again and get back to being a creator. Don't worry. But yeah, I'm still going to try and, you know, share as much knowledge as I can. So I thought about top 10 DnB mix fixes, right? And let's just go straight through. Number one is clip your channels and get your volume up. That's the main thing that well, it's the number one tip, really. So there's no point in producing at a lower volume. You know, other bits of advice on the internet somewhere, you know, you have to produce everything, you know, down here at -4, and then you need to do another thing down at -6. We start loud and finish loud, because when you start loud, you know where like how much space you've got left, you know, in your headroom, and starting loud with the loud elements, of course. So for example, obviously my drums, you know, they're like, the kick drum is typically going to be sort of the most loudest part of the track almost, you know, and the bass as well perhaps. So they're going to be clipping into 0. They're going to be going above 0 usually, you know. So if I take off, I mean, I've made things nice and tidy already in my like group clipping, but like obviously once all the drums are coming together, they're still like going above into the red a bit, you know. I mean, if I look back to my kick drum, for example, if I take my clipper off, it's pretty nice and in a good spot, to be fair. It's not actually going above 0. The key is just to have it like the volume is like as loud as you think you can go, but not intentionally, you know, bringing it down so that you can master it later or something. You just want to produce high and stay high for the whole time, because you can always turn the volume down for mastering at the end, you know, but you need to produce at the high volume so you know what's happening with the amount of headroom that you've got. So keep your volume up, clip your channels. That's the number one tip, right? Yeah, especially like in the, you know, the loud parts of your track. And then, you know, everything else with gain staging and everything, it's all perceived volume. It's the perceived dynamics, you know. You just use your ears, make sure you're going as loud as you can before you squash the sound and over distort it, you know. So don't over distort things, just go find that balance yourself, but start loud and finish loud. Clip your channels, get your volume up, right? Number 2, pick the best kick drum sound possible. A lot of this mix is focused around the kick, right? If you've got a shoddy kick, like a bad quality kick, the whole mixdown's going to fall apart. Don't worry about having to design your own kick if it's not something that you're perfectly good at, because there are so many sick samples out there. Like, check out Ghost Syndicate, Culture. I can't remember all the names of the packs. Karn samples are good. Like, any new one, just don't use these old like Ableton kick samples or like 2010 Vengeance sample packs, because there's just so many better ones these days, you know. Just pick a good modern kick. You're really scraping the bottom of the barrel in terms of your mindset if you're worried about like having to create your own kick and not use a kick sample, because you think it might be like you haven't done everything yourself. Like I can tell you that there are 1,079 other decisions you'll have to make in your track that'll make your track your own. So don't worry about pinching a sample from a sample pack. Like, it's just a kick drum. Like, get over it. Come on. Pick the highest quality kick you can find on the internet, right? That's very important to structure the whole mix down. So number 2. Number 3, sidechain your bass to perfection. Yeah, especially most of the work is in the kick, right? Now, I could do a whole separate video on sidechaining, but for me, I've done loads of. I did a video quite recently about using the kilohertz gate plugin as a sidechain. It's not my favorite way to do it. I was just demonstrating one idea of sidechaining, but like in the whole, my whole journey of production, I still think that the best sidechaining is the LFO tool and the Waves F6. They're my favorites. I've seen Track Spacer and Shaper Box be used, and they look pretty good as well. I don't have them. Track Spacer looks a bit. Sometimes it's like too extreme and too fast. So I still, after all these years, the LFO tool is the best just for taking out like the volume. If you want to just take out the whole volume, which is effective. Yeah, to really get it all out of the way. And the Waves F6 is still my favorite multi-band sidechain for more subtle kick sidechaining. And for this, what I love to do is do like a low shelf sidechaining. So basically I'll low shelf everything, and I'll just use that, and I'll, if I'm, I'm sidechaining from my kick obviously to the bass, so I've got to select I could select the kick bus, for example, here. Yeah, make sure it's set to external. Okay, let's take off the other one. So that's my favourite way to do it more subtle and just target the low end. And then the LFO tool is my favourite way to do taking out the entire volume of something and doing it a little faster. So it's a combination of both. It's never like one or the other. Sometimes it's two. Sometimes it's multiple sidechains. Sometimes it's just like certain basses have more content that you've got to sculpt out. Sometimes you need to do it smoothly. Sometimes like one or two sidechains won't be enough. The key thing is just to constantly test between the relationship between your kick and your bass and hear what needs to be done. And yeah, one sidechain sometimes won't be enough. You can obviously over sidechain as well, but yeah, the key is to just find that perfect balance, yourself by ear. And one way I like to do that is to like listen to the kick on its own. Pay attention to the weight of it. Get a good sense of how much power there is down there. Add in the bass again. And try and let 80% or 90% of that weight of that kick still come through. The trade-off is obviously always you're going to lose a bit of bass or you're going to mask a kick. So what there's no, you're never going to get it 100% perfect, but try and get it as perfect as you can, because it's the most important mixing relationship in the low end. And just take your time. It will evolve throughout the process of the track sometimes. So you might not get it right on the first go. Later on, you can go back and readjust things again as well. Because all the other elements and everything sits on top of that foundation of Mix-down as well. So when everything else changes, you've got other elements coming in, you've filled up your headroom more, you might need to then always go back and readjust the relationship between your kick and your bass. So yeah, I can't stress that one enough. That's why I've put it to number 3. They're not really in list of top 10 like in order, but yeah, it's very, very important to sidechain your bass to perfection, and that means to 99% perfection, as good as you can go, you know? So do whatever you can to get it as clean as and get the perfect balance. That's really, really important, but you guys know that already, right? Next, number 4, clear out all your low-end rumble. This is wonderful. This is just a template without anything else, but let's say I had leads, pads, you know, effects, sounds, loads of other stuff, atmosphere. I mean, here, for example, in my cymbals, like there, I've already cleaned out the rumble, but like when I say rumble, it's like anything that fills up what the kick and the sub should have domination over, you know, down here. Anything else that's filling that space up where it doesn't need to be, remove it. So remove that low end rumble on as much as you can, like particularly obviously the snare as well. There's a lot of low end rumble in snare drums often, like all this, like there's like sub 0 hertz, you know, you don't need that in there obviously, you know. Like I always advocate, I always leave in the low end on like all of the low end on the kick. I don't take any of that out because I feel like the low end of the kick is really, really important, and I want to keep it as clean and untouched as possible, because remember, every time you EQ, you're actually worsening the sound. So it's like EQing, like we have to EQ, but the less we can do it, the better, you know. So there's always a balance with over EQing as well. So don't be doing any of this stuff, you know. Especially like on the kick and the sub, you don't really want to be doing that, you know, because it will like weaken the sound quality. So that's the other thing is, yeah, you can keep in all the low end rumble, you know, essentially from the kicks and the sub or the bass, you know, but everything else, like make sure that you are removing that rumble, and then all of the kick and the bass will have the space to dominate there like it should. So make sure you clear out the rumbles. Number 5, test every plugin for sound quality. So this is super, super key. If you're like using a bunch of like new plugins or recommended plugins, just make sure you like use your own opinion on whether you're going to end up using them or not, because remember like the OTT and how the whole internet was telling you to use it, but it was like the worst plugin that was on the internet. Like it just destroyed all of your low end and weakened everything and made the sound quality like terrible, but it sounded good because it made the high end really overly bright, you know. But it was just like the worst plugin that's been recommended, but everyone was using it. So just don't rely on what the internet's telling you, and just test everything out. Like even if there's like a cool new expensive AI plugin that claims to do everything, just like put it on and like close your eyes and listen to the low end of your track and see how much of it has been ruined by that plugin, because there's actually not that many plugins in the world that actually like retain good sound quality and do what they say they're going to do. You know, 75% of plugins like will tend to weaken your sound quality, so just be careful on which ones you use. Just test everything out, you know. I've spent years just like trying different plugins and just like realizing that over half of them were just like terrible. Like not that they weren't like good, but they just actually weaken your sound quality. So just make sure that you test every plugin that you use. Like don't use everything just because it looks cool. That's really important. Number 6, get your reverb in the right spots. So yeah, this is super, super important, obviously, because, you know, we need reverb to make things exciting and wonderful, you know, but if it's in the wrong place, it's going to completely ruin your mix straight away, like instantaneously. Sorry, my camera ran out of space, so I had to delete video and start recording again, but no worries. So let's talk about reverb again. You know, as long as you've got reverb in the right space, then it's going to be fine, you know? So for example, in this case, like every situation requires something different, you know? But obviously, like if you're smashing all your low end headroom and mid-range headroom with reverb, then it's going to quickly cloud out the whole mix, you know? But let's say like I've got this Reese. Like I've put a reverb on the Reese, right? like there's so much low end and mid range in that reverb, right? Realistically, there's not enough space in the mix for that to happen. So I've got to make sure I EQ that out. So in this case, I've got to find that balance where how much mid range I can have in it. Maybe I could go around there, 500 or so. And then obviously bring it down. It's horrible to have like loud reverb in the foreground. Like the whole idea of reverb is that it's at the back of the room. So if you try and bring reverb up close, it just makes no sense. So we want to use reverb as much as we can, like in the right places, because reverb adds depth and a lovely sound to your track, you know. But don't use it in the wrong places, like right in your face, or with, you know, smashing out your low end and your mid range with it. Like use it in the right spots. Don't use it on every sound either. Like save it for like the right moments, you know. That's something that you sort of learn over time, but it's very important to get your reverb in the right places, you know. Check your kick against everything, right? So this is also really important. For example here, like on the reverb, you know, I could easily, that would be great to sidechain to the kick as well, you know. So there'll be loads of other things in your track, you know, there'll be bits of your tops or something, there'll be like leads, effects, everything. There'll be so much stuff that's going to conflict with your kick, because remember, the kick has to really, you know, if the kick gets masked at any point throughout the whole mix, in the whole arrangement, then you've kind of messed up, you know. So you got to like sidechain most things to the kick, essentially, at least to a certain degree. Maybe you don't always have to do like the LFO tool with the whole volume again. Maybe it's just a case of like low shelving some content out of a sound to sidechain it with the kick. But yeah, I don't really like the idea of like having this control thing where you sidechain everything to the kick at once, because there is like a certain amount of sidechaining that is required for each element. So it's better to do them separately. Like it's better to do it in groups, because then it's a bit more manageable, but like not necessarily on every single channel. But like in your groups, you can put a little group sidechain on. But I wouldn't say that, you know, your leads, your hats, your tops, and everything at once is going to be the same sidechain settings to the kick, you know. So make sure that you sidechain. Make sure you test out the relationship between the kick and everything. That's the important thing, and sidechain if you need to. So next, number 8, control all anomalous frequency spikes. So you might have some sounds. Obviously, in this arrangement, things are pretty like clean, for example, but yeah, you might just have I've sort of chosen quite clean sounds here, but what you'll occasionally have is you'll have a lead that you've made in Serum with like some stupid some stupid spectral wavetable, and then the whole like high end is like horribly unbalanced, you know. Or you've chosen just like some ride cymbal that's just been distorted to the heavens, and then it's just got like so much high end in that it's just sounding like horrible noise and hurts your ears. There's just like some other you've randomly filtered a bass with a massive resonance spike filter, and it's just like shot up the 700, 800 hertz frequency area like to the moon for no reason. So basically, you know, you can always just resort to your trusty old friend Span and just check what's like really sticking out. And obviously, I mean, yeah, cool, there's like a little high-endy part in the cymbals there that's like a bit spiky, you know. It's not that extreme, like you can probably get away with that. But often the case, you'll have other stuff in your track where you're just like, whoa, where's that coming from? So much content out of nowhere, you know, like big spikes in things, you know. And you want to control all of that, you know. Anything that's going like, you know, massively, you know, you want to keep things fairly flat and even, you know. Anything that's like really taking over, you gotta check yourself before you wreck yourself there, because what it'll happen is if you got one little sound, even if it's just like a little hat that's just like massively spiking up more than it should, it squashes your whole headroom, you know, because once you're like clipping the signal, like it's gonna like if you haven't fixed that, you won't be able to gain the whole track up high enough, you know? So any like anomalous like frequency spikes of things, you've got to just control what's going on there so that you can really boost the whole mix at once without having these like unbalanced things, you know? So check that nothing is like massively sticking out. Then, okay, this is another cool one on the number tip number 9. Check the width on everything. I mean, even this reverb. Maybe I can have a look at that. I like to use just a really simple kilohertz stereo analyzer. That's pretty good for me. Because, I mean, it tends to be quite good at telling you when things are too wide because it'll go red. And it's like, you can just narrow it a bit. But if you need to like have the stereo place, the stereo width of every individual element or group pretty on point, you know, like it's something that you don't want to neglect at all, you know. If you've got something that's like too wide, it's gonna like destroy your whole mix because your whole mix is gonna be like, you know, not reined in and solid enough, you know. And also the relationship between different elements, like you're going to create more separation between sounds when like there's different width settings on each sound. So the idea with width is to like, yeah, give some things like more stereo if they want, or some things like more narrow, so that there's contrast between the elements and layers, you know. So how you do it is up to you. Like, I prefer like really wide basses because that's like nice and enveloping and makes me think of like Bonfire by Knife Party and that kind of stuff. You know, just big fat round basses in the low end just sound nicer on your headphones, don't they? But like, you don't necessarily need like a massively wide hi-hat loop at the top. Like, I kind of prefer like wider bass and like a more narrower, you know, hi-hat on the top. You know, it doesn't always have to be like this triangle thing of like the higher up the spectrum you go, the wider it should be. It can be like wider low end and like narrower top end. Like, you can do that as well. The key thing is just to like take control of the width of your different layers and like choose how wide you want everything and try and get and use the space that you've been provided with to create separation between sounds and give priority to certain sounds over the others in the stereo field, you know? So, yeah, check the width on everything and be in control of how wide everything is. Finally, number 10, consolidate and use control groups. So in my workflow, I tend to layer, have a bunch of channels, and if I don't consolidate stuff, the track will never get finished. So this is more of like a workflow thing, but what I tend to do is like, if I've done like a bunch of sound design, like layering on a bass, I've created like different filtered versions, and I've done a little reverb layer, a little distortion layer, and then I've ended up with the same bass with like 6 channels. I will like put it to bed and like consolidate it all as one, you know, so make it into like a one file again quickly so I can move on. And then also, use control groups. So everything I always end up putting back into like the control group, you know, so like there'll be only a certain amount of groups, like leads, pads, effects, vocals, whatever. Like, you can make some random ones up sometimes if you have to, but like if you put everything into a control group, then you can make sure that you're clipping it all properly. You can make sure you're taking out all the rumble properly, and everything of the other previous points you can do a lot easier and clearer. Just becomes a lot more simple once everything has been put into a control group. So nothing is like randomly going to the master without being in its like category, you know. And just make up a new category if you want. You know, if you've got like 100 different flute samples, make a flute group, you know. You want to process that differently, that's fine, but then at least you've got control over all of those channels in one go. So just to remind you then, clip your channels, get your volumes up, start high, finish high, you know, so you know where you're at. Pick the best kick drum sound, you know, don't worry about, you know, not being able to perfectly design one yourself, just use the best quality kick you can get. Sidechain your bass to perfection. Remember, you won't get it right first go. Remember, you sometimes got to do more side chains than one, and that relationship is really important. So make sure you just do your best to get it right. Clear out all your low-end rumble. So all those sounds that have low-end rumble in that you forgot to EQ out, make sure you do that, and you can do that in the control groups at the end. Test every plugin for sound quality. So remember, half the plugins, or more, probably 70 or 80% of the plugins on the internet will worsen your sound quality. So don't use them unless you've like ensured that it's actually improving the quality of your sound. And this is more key to plugins that you place upon your important elements, you know, upon your important things like your kick and your bass and stuff, you know. If you're dealing with like a background layer, white noise hi-hat thing, like, of course, if you destroy the sound quality with some plugin that's a bit weak, like, who cares? It's not really a important sound anyway, you know. But like on the important parts, make sure you test what plugins you're using and they're not like degrading the quality. In the low end especially, that's where it will degrade first. Get your reverb in the right spots. So we want reverb, we love reverb, makes things sound great, but in the wrong area it will destroy your mix and make things horrible. So use reverb cleverly. There's always a clever way to use it. So, and treat it as it should be. Like, use it on cool sounds, and also don't smash your low end and mid range with too much reverb in the mix. Check your kick against everything. Remember, the kick has to really cut through uninterrupted. Like, it's super important. So it's gonna like clash with loads of things you might not even expect. So just check your relationships between your kick and everything else, and see how much of the kick is being masked always, because you'll be surprised at how many things mask the kick. Control all the anomalous frequency spikes. So yeah, none of this random like massive volume spikes from a sound that was poorly chosen or created. Control all of that stuff so that you've got space to actually boost your whole mix down like properly, without like just triggering ridiculous high volumes for no reason. Check your width on everything, super important, just as much as everything else really. You know, getting the right stereo balance, the right how narrow or wide each sound is, you know, is really important, because you're not only are you filling up the frequency spectrum from the low to high, but you've also got the width to think about as well, you know. And it's almost always more important to actually focus on how wide a sound is, rather than if you've panned it left or right, you know, that's another thing. But the actual width of the sound itself is really more important in my opinion. And then consolidate, and so don't clog up your project with 100 channels when you don't need to. Like, when you've got 100 different little things going on, just make them into one file and move on, you know, so you can finish the track. And use control groups then as well. Like, have everything going into some kind of control, so you can do your low end rumble, do your mid side EQing, that kind of stuff. Anyway, feel free to leave some comments down below if it helped you out. I probably like opened up more chances for more questions now, and I realized that I'm kind of opening Pandora's box again, but that's fine. You know, if anyone's got a good question, then I can do another video if I can think of a good way to explain stuff. But yeah, that's my little advice, so you can go back to being a creator again now. And thanks for watching, my G's. Wish you a great start to your week, a very productive one. Come and join us on Friday. We're doing at 4 o'clock European time. That's 3 p.m. if you're in the UK. We're having a watch party for the last label release of the year from Sozen. I was going to say, have I announced that yet? I have, yeah. From Sozen, the 61-year-old drum and bass producer, absolute legend. He's dropping the last track of the year on the label. We're going to have a watch party on YouTube. And then after that, directly after, we're going to do our last feedback live stream of the year for the Patreon supporters. All right, my G's. Then take care. More from me soon. Much love.